Thank you. So hi everyone. I'm Alexander Horn. I'm a narrative designer and writer. I'm currently at Impulse Gear as the narrative lead. They made Farpoint. It's a VR studio. Before that, I was at Ubisoft for a couple of years, freelance a couple of years, and then was in a few studios on the East Coast as a writer and narrative designer. So today I want to talk about the narrative pipeline. Obviously, the narrative pipeline is a huge beast that I could spend all day talking about. So this will be obviously a very condensed version of it. Um, and this is a narrative pipeline. It's not supposed to be the definitive narrative pipeline. You guys will have to adjust it accordingly to your projects. And that's true about every documentation, every kind of process. But there are some things here that every project can use, or you can use in every project. So I'm going to share my screen. It's a presentation, and I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. I'm not going to dive into all of the details, but I am going to hit the more important parts early on. So I'm going to just share my screen. Okay. Okay, so the narrative pipeline, as I see it, I'm from Philly, so that's why I put the process there. But so just a few things regarding the glossary. You can see here I've used these terms: the first pass, second pass, third pass, and polished pass. It's kind of standard in the industry in terms of iterating and some places refer to design level design, L1, L2, that kind of thing. But it's the same idea here, and you can see the definitions here. I'll come back to that, and also I'll be sending this to you guys. You can have it to use on your own. So this is a global view of the workflow, and the main thing to take away from this slide is that the majority of narrative work should happen at the beginning of the project. That is actually when narrative really should be working hardest and crunching and just doing the work, right? They shouldn't. If you get to the end of the project and narrative is running around trying to do things, that's a really bad sign. Research happens in the early phases. That's a huge part of narrative work, and it really is the saying, like, if you have 6 hours to chop down a tree, spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. That really is the case with narrative. That's really what you want to do. So that's the main thing to take away from this slide. These are independent individual areas that we'll be focusing on, but again, this kind of, you tailor this to your project. So for pre-pro, for concept, this is very important, and this does apply to every game, really. Even something like Tetris arguably has characters and a plot and a theme. But the first pillar and the most important pillar really is the theme. And when I say theme, I mean, what is the point of the game? What is it that you're trying to say, right? The why of the game is answered in the theme, and that can be anything from large topics like war and love, or revenge. It can be a question, like, what is the cost of revenge in a time of war, and is it love, that kind of thing. And these are big questions. These are really high level, and you want to take that into account first when creating the game. Now, this is not to say that some of the game won't already be in pre-pro. It might, for technical limitations or studio, the studio or whatever project you're working on, might be like, okay, we're doing a 2D platformer no matter what, so it has to be a 2D platformer. That's fine. That's when you take that information into the theme, and it's like, what is the theme of this 2D platformer? You're not necessarily going to come up with the theme first and then be like, hey, this theme would make a great game for a 2D platformer. You could do it that way, and that is a wonderful way to work narratively, but more often than not, it's not really an option. So anyway, so discovery is a meeting that you want to do early on. It's a brainstorming session where everyone, you've probably seen it. Everyone gets together, all of the stakeholders. You write down all of the themes that you can think of that might relate to this game or that you want to talk about, topical political things or, larger like the environment or, whatever. Just write it down on a piece of paper on a, note card, index card, and everyone just puts them on the table and talks about them. And, you figure out where are the common touch points. You group them roughly, by a cloud. And from there, you should get some ideas of where you want to go, and start doing research. And at that point, the job of narrative is to do a thorough amount of research, right? You're going to read every book that you can find, watch every TV show or film that you can find, play every video game that has to do with revenge in a time of war, right? And what is the cost? Like that, you want to be exhaustive. And really, in this phase, you want to take as much time as you can possibly get. So, if they're like, okay, we have 3 months of pre-pro, you want to spend a lot of that time doing research. Now, next, I recommend like a sizzle reel. That's something that's really useful to get everyone on board with the same vision. It doesn't have to be some video that you edit, that you put together that's like marvelously edited and is 2 minutes long and da-da-da. It can be a clip, like a video clip, that you find on YouTube that you share. That's like, hey, this is the feel of the game. This is what we're going for. This is the theme, right? And you find something. And from that, all of that eventually arrives at a vision statement. Now, this vision statement does not change, and this is the main narrative pillar of your project, and arguably the main pillar of your project, right? This is the single vision that is precisely worded that everyone is pulling in the same direction towards this vision, right? This is what unites everything. And other things can change, other details change, but the vision statement derived from the theme is what unifies everything. Now, I want to before we talk about characters and plot, I want to talk a little bit about another aspect of the theme. And people often confuse the theme or the genre of a game narratively. They'll intermix the words of theme, tone, like genre, those kinds of things. And so we want to be precise with the language there. And I'm going to give you guys a system that I use that is really helpful in defining the theme of the game and the vision of the game and getting everyone on the same board. So it is, I break it down into a couple categories. It's themes, tone, style, voice, and treatment. And so what do I mean by that? So themes we already talked about that. It's the why, it's the, what are we trying to say? The tone of the game is the baseline feeling of the work, right? Is it dark and serious? Is it lighthearted and comedic? Is it, satirical? Is it like, what is the feeling that I get from this work or this project? Tone. Next one, style. So that is the individual details and the realization of the work, right? So what is the style of this game? Is it Baroque? Is it, this is usually art directors have a lot of say in this part of it too. And, a lot of the times an artist will be the best person to define what the style is. But that's different from the tone, right? That's different from the themes. Then the voice. So this is the lens through which we're looking at the work, the unique angle. And this can be like a company, brand, or studio, but it's like your voice, right? Like what do you as the creator, like how are you saying these things, and that is, again, different from the narrative, different from the tone, the theme, and the style. and something to consider. And then finally, the treatment. This is what a lot of people consider the genre, right? It's the wrapper or recognizable narrative structure. So examples are like noir, rom-com, sitcom, western, police procedural. It's the structure, right? It's the pre-existing structure that you're putting onto this project. And a game doesn't necessarily have to have a recognizable treatment, but it can help, right? Like when you do something like Firefly, which is a Western set in space, that's it helps. It can help that. So anyway, that's the detour into some definitions that you can use for defining your theme and finding your vision. So next in the pre-pro concept are these two pillars of character and plot. Now, these can happen at the same time. However, I did put this kind of chronologically. So first theme, and then characters, and then plot. But again, you can kind of, if you're doing a global game jam, you have to do them all right at the same time. But if you have a little bit more time, characters and plot can happen together. But you really should find the theme first. And so for characters, again, you do discover meeting, same thing. Research, same thing. Character bios, this is where you start fleshing out the main characters, right? And if you're doing like a puzzle game, or you're doing, a more abstract game that doesn't have like humanoid or people, in the game character, like that kind of character, you can think of the level as a character. You can think of the player as a character. There's a lot of ways that there are characters involved in the game, but yeah, that's one way to think of it. And character bios lead to character arcs, and this is another system that I use for developing character arcs. So this is derived from like Disney, the Disney process. I got it from Jared Mason, who's a project director, creative director at Shell Games. But this is the way he works on characters, and it's basically strengths, weaknesses, goals and obstacles, strengths, weaknesses, and finally how do they change internally and how do they change externally, their internal arc and their external arc. So goals, what does this character want to achieve? What is their goal? Obstacle, what is the main thing getting in their way, preventing them from reaching that goal? Strengths, what individual strength does this character possess that helps them overcome that obstacle? And weaknesses, what fatal flaw or weakness does this character have that's going to sabotage their attempts? And then all characters should change in a story, internally and externally. Internally, it's usually a little bit more profound, but externally, to reflect that is kind of the icing on the cake, and that's really what brings it all together. So that's what you want to arrive at for a character arc, right? And again, I have this in the notes if I'm going a little fast. But that's a really quick way to just figure out who this character is. What is their goal? What's getting in their way? What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? And then what's going to happen to them? So you do that for the main characters, right? The protagonist, the antagonist, major allies kind of thing, or supporting characters. And then you can move on to the plot. And the reason why this is a stakeholder meeting rather than a discovery meeting is because usually the plot is predetermined. Again, if you get into this pre-pro concept and it's like, okay, well, we're making a 2D platformer. It's like, okay, well, that kind of necessitates a few things plot-wise, right? Like we can't have like really in-depth, cinematic, quick time events or something like that. It can have 3D exploration, and there's a lot of technical constraints in making games, and the plot is not so much created by the narrative designer or the writer. It's really assembled by them, right? You get all of the limitations from the artist. The art director says like, oh, I want to I want to make a game that's underwater, and then the tech person says, well, we can't have any kind of really far like vertical navigation, right? So it can't be deep water, that kind of thing. And all of these things come together, so you start to build. Okay, well, this is what the plot. I have the characters and the theme. Now you're telling me the situation of the world, and I'm going to put that together based on that. And then same thing, research. You can create a backstory pretty safely. This is something that you can do without a lot of input from other people. The theme and the character. This stuff is really our domain. No one else is really going to think about these things. Similarly, the backstory. This is our domain. And then making it work with the plot of what people are presenting to you. This is what the game is. 10 levels, kind of thing. And then from there, you create one of these or both. You want to have a golden path. If your game branches, if it's like a branching narrative, then you want to have the major branches fleshed out of like, okay, we're going to have one major decision point halfway through the game or at the end of the game or early on, whatever, that kind of thing. But you figure that out here at this point in pre-pro. So that gets us through pre-pro. There's obviously a lot of work here, and all of these things should generate documentation. Again, we are the gatekeepers of that information and that knowledge, and a lot of people don't like to read, but we need to have that information. Where do these characters come from? What's the backstory for all of this stuff? What are the themes that we're dealing with that we don't want to lose sight of? And I can send you guys templates for all of this stuff too. I have a lot of templates for these kinds of docs. So the little red dots here just means that all the stakeholders agree, right? These are like agreed upon, stamped official things that are like, okay, we got this agreed upon. If you guys want to change this later, we can point back to this to say, hey, I thought we agreed on this kind of thing. So now we're still in pre-pro. That's the pillars. That's figuring out the pillars, but there's still a lot of work to be done in the world building aspect of it. And Ubisoft likes to work like this, world first. You create the world, and then you can derive stuff from that. And I believe there might be some questions. If anyone has a question, I can't really see the screen right now, but I'll take a second to see if anyone does. Please speak up. Go ahead. Feel free. Oh, I can actually, I'll take a look at my laptop. I got another laptop here, so I can take a look. Crash course chat, right? Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'll continue on. So setting, faction, these things are very world building aspects. This is purely a production thing. And then systems, this is where I feel like maybe there's some interest here, because this is very important for global game jam type events or indie games. Live and breathe here, really. Okay, so setting and faction. So these are similar. It's a very exhaustive document that covers everything that you would possibly want to know about a place or a group of actors. They don't have to be characters. They can be monsters. They could be, whatever you want it to be. But every game has a faction. Even Tetris, right? The faction is the bricks, that are falling. And whatever you are controlling those bricks. Those are two factions there. And setting, similarly, even Tetris has a setting. It's some kind of place where, blocks fall. and even if that becomes just like a few lines on a piece of paper, it's still valuable to have that information, and will be useful later. So again, I have some templates that I can send you guys that you can use to fill out as as much as you can of this kind of information, creating the world, all the points of interest, the places, the like everything, and again, that would get approved upon. Like you create this stuff in narrative, and then the people who will be helping to implement all of it, you want to get them on board. So I mean, this is entirely a collaborative effort. It's not like we're creating these things in a bubble. We should be working hand in hand with artists and designers, and or doing that work ourselves. But yeah, so there's one document for setting, there's one document for faction. Then you also want to have a map. If it's a kind of game that a map would be, if it's a 2D platformer, or a 3D game where you're traveling. If it's a game like Tetris or a puzzle game, you don't really need a map per se. It can be a very high level map where it's just a illustration of the setting. And if it's broken down even further, you want to start doing that also. These should be annotated by the narrative person, so you call out the important things. If it's a 2D platformer, and like Hollow Knight, for example, you have a narrative designer look at the map that the level designer is working on, or the concept artist is working on, and then you would be like, okay, we need to have a store here. This is the name of the store, and blah blah blah, that kind of thing. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot here. I can't go into too much detail because we're going to run out of time. But the pipeline stuff, this is production stuff. If you have VO, you want to get that figured out early. If you have mocap or cinematics, you want to get that figured out early. All of these things that have a knock-on effect down the line, animation requirements, general art requirements. You want to start figuring it out as soon as possible. And it's never too early to just kind of figure this out, really. Systems. So this is the more designery part of it, right? And it starts off with a brainstorming session similar to others, to the pillars. And then you are going to do research, right, on all of these different types of narrative systems, right? Excuse me. Is there a companion system? Is there a romance system? Like, do you have cinematics? Do you have a journal? What are you implementing into your game, or what do designers kind of want to do that is an opportunity to turn into a very rewarding and rich narrative experience, right? Because that's kind of the problem. A lot of the times, a collectible system will be designed by a designer, but not by a narrative designer, or not. That designer won't necessarily collaborate with a writer or narrative person, and then it's a missed opportunity more than anything. It'll work, right? But you can have an amazing, compelling narrative experience when the writer's there from the get-go, right? And it's also the work of a narrative designer to design these things, really. A pure game designer can do this work. They can come up with, okay, we're going to have 10 companions, and they're going to, we're going to spread them out this way. So you meet them, throughout the game, every 2 hours or whatever. But a narrative designer can do that, and is better versed to do that, because if a narrative designer creates that, like, here are the 10 personalities that I would like to create, then a game designer can look at that and be like, okay, let me make that work this way. I'm going to make it so it's every 2 hours, that kind of thing. It's easier to have that be compelling narrative, a rich narrative, than the other way around, where, again, you don't want to be doing this stuff at the end of the game, because it's just going to be retconning everything, and that's never good. And all of this should end up in a design doc that the narrative designer put together. And again, it gets approved. And obviously collaborating with game design and systems designers and all of the design team really and artists. So that's pre-production. Now, when we move into production, things start to get a little bit tricky. So this is more high level. This is more detailed than you guys really than we need to cover here. This is, some games don't have cinematics, obviously. Some games don't have mocap, that kind of thing. And honestly, like as an indie developer, when I was an indie developer, yeah, I couldn't dream of a lot of these things. So, I'll briefly touch on these things, but you want to basically, in the first pass, this is where you really get to the narrative design part of it, where you're setting the structure up of all of this stuff, and you're testing and iterating in this time frame, right? This is, you're building up to your first kind of big milestone. All of the pre-production concept stuff has been done. You know what you're doing. Now you got to start doing it. And this is where a lot of things can change. There's a lot of iteration back and forth. If you come up with a memorable moment for the game, like what is that? What is the crux of this game gonna be? That can change, because it's like, oh, it'll be a revenge moment. Well, no, we don't want to have it be a revenge moment. We want it to be a escape moment, and it's like, okay, well, we tried the revenge moment. It doesn't really work. Let's try the escape moment. And again, you're trying to find the fun in the design aspect of it, but in the narrative aspect of it, you're trying to find the compelling parts of it, the parts that you really want to build towards, right? A lot of mystery writers work backwards, and also police procedural, that kind of stuff, where they'll start with the ending. They'll start with the solution, right? Of like, oh, it was the pet tiger that killed the, person or whatever. And that's the twist. They'll start with that and then they'll work backwards to make it make sense, right? To be like, okay, well, what do we need for that to like make it make sense so that it's a mystery, and do it that way. In that kind of regard, you're also trying to find that here with what's going to work. So flesh out the pillars, continue fleshing out the pillars, start talking with teams about the requirements. Same thing with the setting. You start fleshing that stuff out. Faction, same thing. Production pipeline continues. With systems, you want to start prototyping these. And again, this is the prototyping phase. So you start figuring out what's going to work, what's not going to work. With the journal, you ask a, UI designer or artist to like help you mock up a journal thing, and then you start writing up some pages and seeing like, how does that look? Is anyone going to really sit here and read 10 pages of a journal? That kind of thing. And then benchmark it, have a working prototype that you can put into the game or demonstrate to people that they can play through. So that's really the work of first pass. Second pass, it's still iteration, but it's revising these things a little bit. First pass, everything is placeholder. There's no final wording anywhere, right? There's no even temp. There's no temp VO. There's no temp dialogue. There's no temp anything. It's placeholder. It just says, TBD. Everything is TBD because you're really just working on the structure there and the design of it. You're not working on the wording and the finessing. This is where you start to put in temp VO. This is where you start to share it, the intentions with the larger team, right? In the first pass, it's really for yourself. You know what it's going to sound like. You know what it's going to be like. And so you're just testing it out to see if it's going to work. In this one, it's where in second pass, this is where you start to try to give an example so other people on the team can understand your intention. And continue to refine the design of it. It's still narrative design. And this is where, you have the journal system figured out, okay, nothing longer than one page, and ideally it's like a paragraph or two. So this is where you start to structure that out and be like, okay, so we want to have 100 journal entries. We need to break them up by area. We need to break them up by, character, and you start doing that kind of work that again can be collaborative with the game designer or level designer, that kind of thing. So that's the second pass. Third pass, this is where you start to do the writing. Really, this is where you write everything. VO, public facing text, anything that's going to be in a UI menu, that kind of thing. Um, and this is where you want to get to shippable quality. So something that you would put in front of an audience. It's obviously not going to be perfect, but you want to get it to shippable quality. And this is more where you do the writing part of it, right? Where people hear narrative designer, writer, what's the difference? It's like we're all a little bit of both, and we all do a little bit of both. But this is the part where really, like, you don't want to change major conflicts. You don't want to change the beats of those conflicts. You don't want to change characters, any of that. You really want to iterate and polish at this point on that. So that's the third pass. And then the polish pass is really editing, right? You got it to shippable quality, and now you're, tweaking commas, a word here and there. You want to get it ready for VO if you have VO. And, as indie developers, it could be daunting sometimes, but you will be surprised. There are a lot of actors out there and talent out there that wants to work in VO, and collaborating with an indie developer is a great way for both folks to get ahead. So a lot of non-union actors that want to get in to the industry are willing to, work for, either free or not a lot of pay in order to get the experience and that kind of thing. So I would encourage, if your game calls for VO, it's not daunting, do it. And it is a great, if you guys are familiar with like the Supergiant games and Hades and Bastion and all that, like they started their small studio, and one of the main people was a voice actor. And those games have tremendous writing, tremendous narrative because of that, right? It would not be the same without the narrative, without the VO. So definitely something I would suggest. But then, yeah, it's editing until launch. Again, each one of these little rectangles is a big bucket, and there's a lot there. Just going a high level here. So, yeah, so that's basically it. That's the polish pass at the end. And that's the narrative pipeline. So yeah, that's I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Thanks once again. That was really interesting. I had a question about pre-production regarding faction, seeds, and opportunities. I was wondering, I'd like you to, if possible, go into a little bit more detail about it. And also, are those seeds that are then reincorporated further on down the line? Does that intersect with plot as well, or is it purely just a sort of mechanical thing with the game factions?
Right. That's a great question. So I'll bring up a example of the template that I has that in there. So that's really for leveled other people in the team to look at and to generate ideas, right? So, obviously you're creating them, so you know them, but this is to entice level designers, artists, programmers, anyone on the team to see that and be like, oh my God, that's a really good idea. We could make a whole, minecart level because of this. This character is, raised in mines. So, their backstory is they come from a mining town. And then, in the narrative seeds and opportunities section, listed there, one of those things would be like, minecart level, like Indiana Jones or whatever, like you could do something like that. And then someone seeing that and be, that would just be one line that you put in there. you remember what it is, you know what it is. That person, someone else will see it and be like, hey, Nix, it's Nix, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's me.
Yeah. So it'd be like, hey, Nix, I saw the minecart suggestion or opportunity in this document. Um, I want to do that. Let's do that. Like, can you tell me more about that? And then, you know, and then that's the use case for that. And let me see if I can find the example. I'll bring it up. This is from Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning.
Ooh.
There was a unannounced sequel that never saw the light of day and never will see the light of day. But where is it? Sorry, I gotta. Oh, I know, I know. Uh, Sorry, one sec, guys. I'm just gonna pull this up. It's a great question. It's important, so I want to have I'll show you an example of where would I have it? Here we go. Oh, I'm going to open this and I'll share my screen again. Okay. So, can you see that?
Yes, Kingdoms of Amalur Evergreen. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So this is at the end. Narrative seeds and opportunities, right? So this is like a elf faction. This is one of the faction docs. But these are all like things that I came up with that was like, oh, okay, here's some ideas for quests. Here's some ideas for, conversations, anything that I could think of. And ideally this list would be as exhaustive as possible, right? It would be as many entries as you can think of. But this is, someone would go through this whole document, read all of this, and get to the end, and then be like, okay, cool. That's like, this is going to be a main quest uh, level, right? And then, this is going to be a free form activity kind of thing. So that's
Yeah, yeah, thanks so much. The follow-up to that was, is it common in your experience for those seeds or opportunities to change the state of the game much? And if so, does that happen early or late?
Yes, as early as possible, ideally. But yeah, actually there's a lot of this kind of thing in the Division where, I mean, the Division was a huge game with thousands of people working on it, right? But the creative director, would sometimes see a suggestion that someone made and it really resonated with him, and he would be like, "Oh my God, let's do that. It's a good idea. Let's do that." Right? So those narrative seeds and opportunities can, really grow into something. They can really uh, shape the whole game. Really, that's not that brainstorming. That's part of the pre-production and concept phase, because it is really important brainstorming that only narrative people are going to be doing. So you're one of the few people involved in a project that's kind of responsible for that, right? That's our job. We have to come up with these stories and these ideas, because we're the best ones to do it.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Other questions? Yeah, that's a great question. So I make the joke sometimes that my job is less about actually creating narrative and writing narrative, and more about explaining things to people, like trying to explain narrative to the backstory of a character, or no, this is not, we can't have um, this character attack this character because that's the whole point of this exercise. Like, she would never attack her, so we can't start off the cinematic that way. um so it's a lot of constant communication, a lot of setting up expectations, and having a lot of this work started from the get-go, right? You want to, you know it's a fait accompli when it happens to us, because we're supposed to be the ones creating narrative. However, it's not for a level designer. If we say, okay, there's a underwater level, um, the level designer can't be like, well, what the hell? That's not, I didn't come up with that. Da, 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 da. It's like, oh no, the narrative requires that there's an underwater level. It can look however you want, it can play however you want, but like the story, if it's like a BioShock, it's like, sorry, like there's got to be some underwater, um, and in an ideal situation, the people are putting their heads together to figure out what they want to do. And I've worked in both ways, right? Like, if you come into a project late, you have to retcon stuff. You have to work backwards. So it's like, okay, there's an underwater level. Alex, make it work. And it's like, okay, I'll figure it out. That's fine. But something like BioShock, for example, like, no, that starts with the underwater level. Like, that's going to be a huge part of the game.
Yeah, the plane crashes in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. So that, that's where you can head off a lot of future conflicts or problems, right? Where you set the game in the 50s, and it's like, well, no, there's no sci-fi laser beams. It's like, well, can it be steampunk? So yeah, that's fine, it can be steampunk, but it can't be sci-fi. Sorry, to the weapons artist or whatever. And this work is true about indie games too. Like, the narrative is stuff that you can figure out in pre-production almost comprehensively, and then have an answer. And artists love that. All developers love that, when they are like, okay, what does this special effect look like? Is it plasma energy based? Is it fire? Is it just magic, like magical? I don't even know what that means. And then you can be like, well, actually, no, it's supposed to be plasma energy and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, great. Now I know what to do. I can make it look cool. So, that's the ideal way to work for narrative. How often does that happen? Not very often. But you choose your battles. Like, if there's something that you really care about, like, hey, I need this game to be underwater, then that's the thing that you focus on. And in the 1950s or whatever, you say, okay, no, this is an underwater game, from the get-go, and then everyone has to accommodate that. So yeah. Does that answer your question, or did you mean more like practical?
No, that answers the question, but I would want it if you could, like, just because again, I'm thinking about collaboration. Like, how do you stratify? How do you organize your team to kind of address all of that? Um, so, I mean, as narrative lead, for example, how do you receive input from your team, and how do you process that into the game?
Yep. Yeah, so that is probably the most painful part of the job, really. Narrative is one of those things where, like I said, a lot of people work backwards, so they'll figure out the ending, and then they'll work backwards to make the twist work. Like, oh, we want to have this really impactful, powerful moment at the end, so let's build this Rube Goldberg machine to make that happen at the end. And then you build it out, and then someone comes along and wants to change this section. And it's like, well, if you change this, all of this breaks. Like everything else breaks. And that happens a lot. A lot of times, there'll be feedback where it's like, oh, we need to change the mechanics of, we can't have melee in this first-person shooter. It's only guns, no melee. It's like, oh, okay, well, that was the final scene, where you were going to punch some glass and break out of the whatever, it's like, now we have to change that entire scene, or, you push back. But it depends on the size of, you want to have, so my studio is small, it's 25 people. So I'm the only narrative person, and we have, we outsource some of the writing. Like I manage a team of external writers. That's enough, if it's a huge game, you want to have, the Division 2 had like 15 people on the narrative team, spread out over 4 studios. So that was, and I think that was the right size. You wouldn't want to go smaller than that for a game that size. But one person doing the narrative can collaborate. When I was in the Division, every day I was going to talk to the level designers, going to talk to the artists, going to talk to my team, my narrative team, and see what they're doing. The tricky part is that very few people have, like, a creative director ideally should have overview of the entire game and know all of the different parts. It's hard for them to do it, but that's kind of their job. And a producer, executive producer, similarly, a narrative lead director, of whoever's in charge of the narrative is responsible for that, for having eyes on all of the aspects of the narrative in the game. Because one artist might put a decal on a wall somewhere that says like SO2, and they're just like, oh, it's just some letters and numbers, it doesn't matter. But they might not know that SO2 is actually a really important code name for something in the game that they never heard of, or that they wouldn't know, they shouldn't know. It's the narrative designer's responsibility to be on top of that, right? So it's a lot of management. It's a lot of, seeing what the artists are doing, seeing what the designers are doing, checking in on everyone, and following up.
All right. Yeah. So that answers my question. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to ask.
I have a question. This one might be a little bit out there, but typically most video games nowadays, or for a long time, have been designed around people being fully abled. Does accessibility ever come up in narrative design? Like, do you have any experience with that, and how does accessibility affect like narrative design?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So this was a larger issue. This was a large issue a few years ago, where it came up because it was, partially for accessibility reasons, but it was one of the BioWare games where one of the narrative designers said, like, they were advocating for a casual mode, or I forget the exact wording, but it was like, I enjoy these games because of the stories. I want to be able to play through the stories and not be frustrated by the difficulty, or frustrated. But she was effectively arguing an accessibility thing. It's like, the game should be accessible for everyone, because the stories are enjoyable for a lot of people, and those people are denied the opportunity to enjoy this game because of the difficulty or accessibility, or those kinds of things. And she was, she was met with a lot of vitriol from the gaming community. A lot of fans really lashed out about dumbing down games and blah 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 blah, that kind of thing. And it's a terrible thing to conflate like identity with, like, the identity of what games should be with like an accessibility issue. It's that was a shame. But I think that the larger point is that that she was hitting on is that yeah, like narrative works well when it's interesting, when people find it interesting, and people find things interesting that are diverse. And if you tell the same story over and over again, it's not people are not going to find that interesting. And taking into account things like accessibility are going to necessitate that your game is at least a little bit more interesting to a wider audience because it's different, because it is taking into account those things, right? So I think it was one of the Dragon Ages, I can't remember, but like the fact that they did put in a casual mode that like people could play where they're really getting the meat and potatoes of the story meant that that changes the entire dynamic of the game, right? So yeah, I can go off on a tangent here, but I really love this topic. If you guys played Bastion, and I know Supergiant does this a lot, they'll put the narrative during really difficult moments in the game, right? On purpose, like strategically, because in those moments your adrenaline is pumping, your heightened senses, you're just like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, I gotta like stay alive, or that kind of thing. And so you're at the same time you're also getting this VO and this story, and it doesn't, I make this joke that like it doesn't really matter what the narrative was in the Bastion challenge levels. I would have loved it no matter what it was, because when I would survive, I would be like, oh my god, that was amazing, I love that. That is a sliding scale, right? Because flow and issues of frustration versus too easy and it's boring, too difficult and it's hard, those things, that's relative, right? Like that is not a set, objective thing. That depends on your audience. And when you do that with Dragon Age, now you're shifting the flow and it's like variable, right? And you can really play up narrative moments that you wouldn't have played up otherwise if there was only one way to play this game. And if there are multiple ways to play the game, then that's opening doors to be able to write different kinds of narratives and emphasize different parts of the game. In terms of content, I know like we try to, as writers and narrative designers, again, we want to tell interesting stories, and the way to do that is to cover as much diverse storytelling as possible. And that's where I found success. In the Division, I was responsible for a lot of the like out there things with like the American Indian Museum text on the wall, right? Like we wrote that, right? Because that's what I wanted to do. And there was some university students in the northeast section of the map that was, the university for the deaf, and so they would speak in sign language with each other, and the animators were like happy to. They're like, yeah, that's a cool idea, let's do it. So that was awesome. And I found those moments in the Division interesting. Like that's what I like. Like more straightforward Tom Clancy, it's like got that everywhere. So I think that's the way to go with content. So both accessibility in terms of like the game, playing the game, but also representing accessibility, super important for both. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, actually, it really, really does. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, very eye-opening. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
All right, I have another question, and I hope that I'm not taking up all the slots from everyone. But are there, how can I word this? Are there like narrative frameworks that are unique to interactive media as compared to literary media? Meaning, I haven't, in my own personal reading, found like the gaming equivalent of like the hero's journey or stuff like that.
That's a great question. So the thing with the hero's journey is that it does it's very easy to take that and put it on games because so many times the player is the hero, right? So we can do that pretty easily, and people do it, and it works. I mean, it's not, you know, it works. I don't have a problem with it. But there are unique considerations for games, and this is something that I am really interested in. That's beyond single player games, really, because I think that the unique opportunity with storytelling in games is not single player games, but it's multiplayer games, and anything that starts to go in the direction of like Dungeons and Dragons, that's unique. Like you can't have Dungeons and Dragons in film or TV or a book because it's it's mostly one way, almost 99% one way. But with something like Dungeons and Dragons, it's a back and forth, and video games can have that too. And I think that you see that a lot in like competitive video games where they start to take on a life of their own in terms of narrative in a way that you see in like sports, or you see in like improvisational jazz, or you see in like martial arts or performance. I played soccer growing up, like a huge soccer fan, and like the moments that emerge from a really good soccer game where there's like one team against the other and they're just fighting out, there's always a story there. I feel like that's an opportunity when you watch like Daigo parry Justin Wong in Evo. Like that's unique to video games and games, I would say, in general, because you can have a similar thing in a sport. But that's, I think, a unique narrative structure that does not work in like TV. If you study TV, film, and books and linear media, you will almost never stumble upon this other form of storytelling where it's almost like it's participatory and it's truly
co-creative, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's co-constituted narrative, not yeah, exactly. That's holodeck, right? Where it's like I am a single player in this world and everything is completely believable and I can wander around and play in the sandbox forever and it's really entertaining. That's one direction. The other direction is what you're suggesting, which the second that Netflix or whoever manages a way to monetize a truly interactive narrative between two people, like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of situation. As soon as anyone figures out how to monetize that, that is another lucrative branch that the industry will go this way and this way. Like Ubisoft will continue making these amazing sandbox games, which are fun. Like I love them, but it is Westworld, right? It's headed towards Westworld, and then the other way being like, you see it all the time now with seasons and like Fortnite and like these games that are more and more live, more and more interactive with community managers and stuff. I think that's going to turn into eventually some really cool, really interesting, unique narrative
Yeah, the idea of the evolving world, and how that will take on the facets, especially the Zoomers, man. These Zoomers think differently. You know what I mean? I'm pretty interested to see what happens.
Yep. Yeah. Me too. I think we have an absentee question. There's this show with Will Wheaton about some virtual players or something. Haven't checked it out. Since I was at the alley. Yeah. I did hear something about Will Wheaton recently, but yeah, I don't know the that media, but I did hear something about that news recently. But yeah, that's my interest. So things like the I actually Glenn, I'm glad you asked that question, because all of this really started. I started down this kind of path because like I played soccer after school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I played soccer in Bolivia, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a soccer, football player. No, not for me. But I developed a true appreciation for the this co-constituting narrative. This like two sides come together to create the story of the game. And then I went back to school. A really good model for video games, right? Which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically real of like Western. The structure of it is the griot would say a line, and then it's met with a affirmation right at the end of the line. And the affirmation, the speed of the affirmation, the emphasis of the affirmation, it was this constant pinging of back and forth, right? So if you think of that in a way of like dungeon master and audience, like it was built into the structure of the song, right, of Sanjara and of the epic. And that was like when I learned about that, I was like, this is the real deal, because it's a built-in structure for audience feedback, but you're also getting the story at the same time, and it's like the audience is both simultaneously experiencing the narrative, like witnessing it, but also participating in it. And it was this like it is like improvisational jazz or dance. It's like something that just happens once. That's, I think, an awesome structure.
The call of response is affirmation. When you say the audience is both, they're both the participating and simultaneously audience. Because both Just Join and I have been DMs for different systems at different points and different tables. So would you say that they're also adding their own flavor to the story as well? Is that kind of what you're going down the line of?
Absolutely. So, and what's really nice about it, and I think this is what video games can steal from. So with Dungeons and Dragons, it's like you have so much freedom, right? If the players are like, oh, we want to go left, and you're like, oh man, I really don't want them to go left, but they want to go left, so now I have to adjust to that, right? With this epic is, and in a video game that's really difficult, because it's like they want to go left. It's like, we haven't built that level. Like there's no art. Like they're gonna go over there and it's a white box, it's a nightmare. Like can't do that, right? With this structure of an epic is like the story has known beats. It has a beginning, it has an ending, it has all of these things that people know that are going to happen because they've heard the story before. But the emphasis, and therefore the way that the story develops, changes based on the audience. The audience will, it's indeed is the current like common refrain, right? The word for indeed. So, say like, and then Sanjara went to see this person, and then they'll say indeed. And if it's like a really strong indeed, then the griot gets the idea, okay, let's go down this route, and like, let's make this a big part of the story. But if there's not a lot of enthusiasm, then they'll just gloss over that part and move to the next part of the story, right? And that's way more manageable for a video game, because you create, here's the known structure, the known world, right? And then it's whatever the character, whatever the audience wants to focus on, that's where we take the story. And, you know, there is some flexibility in like, you know, is this character going to get wounded or if they're going to get killed? You know, there's either way they're out of action, but, you know, it does change the you know, repercussions in the story, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like different versions of the Curse of Strahd, and maybe in different modules, and the story beats will remain the same, but players will have different experiences, and the tone might change. I'm kind of feeling that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
One of the closest experiences I think that video games get in this world, in this kind of field, is if you guys ever play Left 4 Dead, the original, 4 players versus 1. The 1 player, when they're controlling zombies, is kind of like a DM, because you can decide who lives, who dies, who gets attacked, who doesn't. You know, you can control a lot. I mean, even if you get really expert players, when you're the tank, you can pretty much kill anyone. Like it's hard. It's really hard for the players when you're controlling the zombies. But the other thing is, it's not about winning when you're the zombie. Like, it's about making this fun. Who am I going to pick on? Who's going to be the hero? Who, you know, like, are they all like, do I let them live until the end and then kill them? Or do I let like one person live and they have to rescue everyone? Do I pick on one person the whole time? Like, all of those, that's I think probably the closest. And it's the same levels, right? It's the same 4 or 5 levels over and over again. So it's, but the story is different every time.
So
For sure.
So it's almost like by asking for player input, you're creating this experiential layer on top of everything. All right.
Yep.
That's interesting. I think we're running out of time. I think we're a little bit over time, actually. So thank you, Alex. I just want to have the floor for one final question. Like, if anybody has anything they want to say, like, this is it, or, you know, hold your peace. Silence. Cool.
All right.
All right, Alex, again, thank you so much for just popping in. Thank you so much for that presentation. I really think everyone got something of value from that. And everyone else, you know, recording will be up into the appropriate thread, and this can be shared with whoever else in the community. Thanks again, Alex.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and good luck everyone with the Global Game Jam if you're doing it.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks so much. Have a great one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.